Welcome everybody. Let's do a quick round, if you don't mind sharing your name and something that you know about Hanukkah. What is Hanukkah? That's the question that the Talmud asks. My Hanukkah. What is Hanukkah? So you don't have to have the deepest knowledge. You don't have to know everything. Just something that you know that Hanukkah is about.
I'm Jess, and I know that Hanukkah is the miracle of the oil lasting for 8 days.
Wonderful.
My name's Frederica. For me, Hanukkah, the lesson is about making do, that you don't need as much as you think you need, like they were able to stretch out the oil.
Oh, beautiful.
They probably set the wick to be really, really short, so it was a little teeny flame, so it was able to stretch it out.
Oh, wonderful. I love that interpretation, that it's about conservation, that there's a miracle in conservation. Spoken like a true Sierra Club member. Yes. Oh, really? How did I know that? That's great. Sorry for the patriarchal Hanukkah that I have here, but it's the only one that I had access to here in the building from ages ago. All right, yes.
Tamir, I think about Hanukkah and presents and the excitement that a lot of kids get around that.
Okay.
And also the fact that like every Jewish holiday, there's some demise that occurred around the time of whatever we're trying to celebrate.
Right. Right, almost was it the Alan King? They tried to kill us, we won, let's eat,
Oh, yeah.
kind of thing. Please.
My name is Kelly, and as a prior chef and a mom, for me, it's like very food centric. So like the things that you bake and are making and frying, and I actually would like to know more about that because I don't know why we eat certain things at the time.
Great. Excellent. So it turns out, I think for most Jews, Hanukkah is an evolving type of holiday. It starts off with the gentle, joyous things. It's the food, it's the candles, it's the presents. And of course, presents is really just a feature of, the late 20th century, or 20th century, really. There was a Hanukkah gelt, which was a way of the grandparents getting the children excited by having a little coin for them or something. But it wasn't the point. And it starts that way. And also, I'm curious why nobody said it's the Jewish Christmas.
God.
Yeah, probably because none of us think of it that way. But if you think about Hanukkah as an American Jewish holiday, what is it most similar to? And when you drive around certain Jewish neighborhoods and you see the Christmas lights on some houses and then blue and white lights around the Jewish houses, there's a whole mixture of thoughts about this. Like, if they're going to do it, we're going to do it too. It's festive. Why can't we be festive? What does Christmas and Hanukkah have in common? It's the same time of year. It's the darkest time of the year. Of course, there's a festival of lights. And there are many cultures that have a festival of lights. So then what is Hanukkah? Because basically we all have sort of historical references, and yet it seems to fit very nicely with a sort of a generic cultural experience. So
With Kwanzaa, again, you have candles, and it's this time of year, and everything.
Right.
I know a lot about Kwanzaa.
Well, they did it
you do?
on purpose.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and that it was a very purposeful, intentionally created ritual, very much based on Hanukkah, I would say, because the underlying features of Kwanzaa is all about identity, the African American Black identity. And it incorporates a ritual remembering of certain features of history and so on and so forth. So it's very similar to Hanukkah in that sense, and particular to another group. So there are all these things that come together, and then there are all these things that split them apart. What I'd like to do is explore some of the history and see how the features of history about Hanukkah go from what happened to then how Judaism digested it. And by Judaism, I mean the Judaism that we know, which is Rabbinic Judaism. How the rabbis then digested this history, and maybe learn a little bit about what their intention was. What were they struggling with? What were they dealing with? What did they want to promote? And then see how it manifests itself today in relationship to both the history and then the rabbinic situation, and see if we hear any rhymes in today's world. So ultimately, what is Hanukkah is about what was Hanukkah, but I want to know what is Hanukkah today by the end of this. That's the objective. Okay? So with your permission, I'm going to hand out, in full disclosure, and for the recorded observers here, I'm going to
Get that other door.
Okay, yeah, please, thank you. Is this it? Yes. I'm going to share, this is in full disclosure. If you can take one, pass it around. A compilation of facts drawn from ChatGPT. I want that on the record.
Love it.
And it's like, wow, Rabbi Katzan, you're so good at formatting and
Never used it once.
yeah.
I've got to get on it.
It's very good at presentation. So I will, of course, make whatever adjustments that I need to. And in my Hanukkah file, I have from Wikipedia from 15 years ago, and it's actually, this is clearer and better. I don't know how they do it. I'm not going to ask.
Also, Wikipedia has been updated and it's good too.
Yes, and not always by people who should be updating it. This is something that we're finding. Okay, so we need to go back to before the Common Era, to the period of the Maccabees, and in that period, you see that the Seleucid Empire, the Syrian Greeks, who were Hellenists, had providence over the land of Israel, over Judea, as it was called at that time. And I hope that you'll take some time with this. I don't want to read through all of it. But essentially, what's going on at the time is that there was a protracted amount of time in which the Jews themselves had been somewhat splitting up in terms of culture. Classically, what are called the Sadducees, who had domain in the tribe of Judah and Benjamin, so basically Judea. They emerged as an aristocracy because they had the temple in their domain. They had provenance over the temple. And that is the epicenter for all Jews. Separately, which means that an elite structure emerged. If you are not part of that elite structure, any of this ringing familiar? Resentment and alienation, feelings of we're not the same, you have your priorities, we have ours, why aren't we communicating? And it's usually some kind of travesty is what will ultimately wake people up and they'll work to come together. But that hadn't happened yet. And so you had somewhat of a factional consciousness, but it was mild. when you have Antiochus, Antiochus IV, take over, he inherited a politically challenged empire, which of course made it possible for a revolt to gain any ground. And so you have in the area of Judea, Jews who were absorbing the culture of the dominant power. And it's not that they were forced to become, but they were invited. They felt invited. They wanted it. They brought it in. And also, the more you bring in the culture of the dominant power, the more favor they will have for you. And so there's a political layer to this. And so over time, whatever had been known of what Jewish thought, Jewish norms were about the body and what we do with our time and what we prioritize and what we elevate, was sort of old and forgotten, or at least not present. So little by little, those in the aristocracy, the elites, took it on and brought it in, which of course made the traditionalists quite upset. Like, what are you doing? You're a Jew. What do you mean you're going to reverse your circumcision just so you can play in the Olympic Games? Like, what's more important? Today we'd ask, like, what's more important, to be like them or to do what God wants in the world? Shouldn't you be a warrior for social justice over and above the shot put? Like, come on. And so there began this internal rivalry, and you see here the internal rivalry, especially between supporters of Jason and Menelaus for the high priesthood, likely played a major role in triggering the crisis. So what is that? You have corruption in the priesthood because of political expedience. Who are you going to get more money and support from? Or how do you get more money and support? And so there were these conflicting tensions brewing already within the Jewish community. But then there was a step that was taken, not necessarily for the sake of oppressing the Jews, but more so to show dominance over the Jews who were beginning to revolt and reject. And when you're in a mode of crisis, as this empire was, they just responded with tyranny. So was it just to destroy the Jews? Most historians say no, actually. It was an action that was taken because they were in crisis. And they wanted the problem to go away. So we're just going to do this, and we'll be so forceful that they'll capitulate.
Shock and awe.
Shock and awe, which doesn't always work. And so there was a moment, we see at the bottom of the first page, Mattathias, who we know, Matityahu, the first Maccabee, who was a priest, or from a priestly family, in Modi'in, which, today is about 35, 40 minutes from Jerusalem. It's on the way to Jerusalem. He was being forced to do a sacrifice of a pig, is the way I learned it, to these pagan gods. He refused. But then a Hellenized Jew stepped in to do the sacrifice so he wouldn't have to. And you can imagine that this Jew thought he was, come on, nobody should get killed here. Let's just do it. It's not, right? You could be that, or it could have been, get out of the way, old guy. We're not like you anymore. We're modern. Honestly, I don't know which one. I don't know if anybody knows, but you can see either. And it's
Could be a
familiar.
mixture of both even.
Could have been a mixture of both. So
I have
he,
a question.
one second. He steps in to do the sacrifice, and that's when Matityahu said, "That's all I can stands. I can stands no more." He was so angry that he went ahead and he killed the Jew and the centurion that was forcing the sacrifice.
This elderly priest wasn't exactly all fragile and disabled, was he?
Apparently not.
And I didn't know that priests were like armed with weapons to do these things.
Well, I wouldn't make a categorical statement. Imagine that you're a community and the pressure has been growing over time. The dissatisfaction, the anger starts to grow. And then people turn to violence when there's no other alternative. And for them, there's no other alternative. That's all they could take. And at that point, it reminds me of Moses going out among his brethren and seeing a taskmaster beating a Jew, beating a Hebrew, and he kills him. And then the next day he sees two Hebrews fighting with each other. Why are you fighting? And they say, what, are you going to kill us like you did that Egyptian? To which he understood, oh, it's out. And he realized, I got to get out of town, because if the word is out, they're coming for me. And that's what happened
He just
here.
grabbed a sword from somebody at random. And I think of it as a moment of passion, that he was just so pissed off he couldn't,
Yeah, it was an explosion. Yeah.
it wasn't premeditated.
Right. So I wouldn't say that the priests were gearing up for this. I think it happened spontaneously, and then it unleashed a whole energy, and they escaped to the hills, and that's where they started this guerrilla war. So in 164, so when is that approximately? 166. Or 167 is when that event happened, and then Mattathias, Matityahu dies, and his son Judah takes over, Judah the Maccabee, and he is really the one who conducts the guerrilla war that culminates in the recapturing and the rededication of the temple, which is what we celebrate at Hanukkah. The historical reason why they were able to be successful was because Antiochus, I think was it at that point or maybe just a little bit after, he was just in a state of political weakness and couldn't do anything about it. He was fighting the Romans. The Ptolemies and the Seleucids were, at war all the time, vying for power in the Middle East, Egypt, and so forth. And so it was a target of opportunity. It was an opportune moment. The stars aligned. And they also innovated guerrilla warfare, which was not how empires were created. But it certainly was how this community was able to eliminate the dominance of the Seleucids, of Antiochus. So in a sense, that's how they did it. It was brutal. And then they cleaned out all of the idolatry from the temple, which, remember, is not only symbolic of idolatry qua idolatry. It was also the temple that was run by, now here people might insert different adjectives, corrupted Jews, assimilated Jews, elite, assimilated, corrupted Jews. Like, you can add on all the black marks you like. So at that time, I feel like I'm talking too much, but it's like to get this in your head, to see that there was civil war as well as religious war against the idolaters. You had a question, Roz, or?
Well,
it's okay.
actually, it relates to what you're talking about right now as well as earlier. Why is there a priest, Mattathias, and sacrifices in Modi'in instead of in the temple?
So Mattathias was not conducting, he was of a priestly family, but he wasn't working as a priest.
Oh, that's where he's from.
That's where he's from. He was a Kohen by
Yeah, I
dissension, but
understand.
not employed at the time.
But still, the sacrifice that the Hellenes were trying to promote was apparently in Modi'in, not in Jerusalem.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, because remember, the Hellenists had bamot, had altars everywhere.
Right, yeah.
And it was to force the Jews to do the very things that are antithetical to them, to try to break them and be dominant over them. No circumcision, no learning of Torah, no keeping of Shabbat, and doing these,
Yeah, those strictures are
right,
pretty obvious.
We're gonna make them assimilate,
exactly.
Exactly.
like the board.
But remember, that wasn't necessarily the plan and intent. It was more to break them than it was to destroy them.
Right, no, I get it. They're
Yeah.
not trying to, it's not genocide, it's.
Right. So
it's-
I think that
it's
that's
cultural.
Exactly. That's an important feature because that's not how I learned it. Because it's like tried to kill us, we won, let's eat. You know, like there was yet another genocide that they were trying to commit. And in some way you could kind of make that argument, but once you start to make the argument, it really isn't that.
More cultural genocide.
Right. You want a great example of cultural genocide, look at Russia.
Right.
70 years of outlaw and pain and murder and intimidation, and 3 generations later the kids come out, I don't know, and I don't care. Right?
Ooh, the
Not all of them, obviously.
Chinese right now with the Uyghurs.
Yes, exactly. Okay. So that's the background, and I have another.
Nothing changes.
It's weird how. All right, so let's take a look at this. Hanukkah and Civil War. We don't have to go through this too deeply. It just will give a few details of the politics of the time.
I tell you, we generally don't go into all this stuff.
I know, that's why I wanted to do this, because now, when we approach Hanukkah, and ultimately, what's the conclusion, Jeff, is going to be that we're going to do Hanukkah the way we've always done it.
Yeah.
However, to bring this in should infuse Hanukkah with a kind of intensity and relevance that it deserves. Because the rhyming of history needs to be paid attention to. And right now, and we could probably always have said this, but right now it feels like what I described earlier. I didn't want to say it yet. I want to bring us to it in a little bit. But what we have here, and for the people who are watching on the recording, you can maybe take screenshots. The pressure incited a rebellion. The rebellion grew steam, and it was fed by the energy that had been brewing through the civil tensions that had been generations long. And especially when you get to item number 4, traditionalists versus the Hellenizers, 2 visions of Judaism. What do you have? You have the Judaism of those who lived in the city centers, and then the Judaism of those who lived in the rural areas. I mean, also try not to hear, the story of American politics. I dare
Tell
you.
me what, it says, some wanted Jerusalem to become a Greek-style polis. What's the difference between what Jerusalem was and what a Greek-style polis would be?
Probably the organization of the city, the opening of various kinds of shops.
They didn't have shops before?
There were probably shooks, but to have like these big, like we see, and is what ultimately Herod did build throughout Israel, were these Greek Roman looking cities with stalls. The Cardo in Jerusalem is part of that. It was not a Jewish dominant culture. It was importing these other features from another world. Emphasis on, we wouldn't call it science yet, but the emerging philosophy, the Iron Age thinking, which did influence those who were ultimately it did influence the elite rabbis, was not kosher by the religionists. I try not to do this too much, but just think, Afghanistan before Islamic Revolution.
I need to comment.
Well, hold on. Where you had an emerging democratic, more modern in the 1970s, right? And then you had the religionists who couldn't tolerate it. And there's not a direct line to the Taliban, but separately, you have the super orthodoxy that once it gets power, moves in, and it's a civil war. What's your issue?
I'm sorry. I have a problem with people assuming that it rhymes that much, that our traditionalists at the time of the Maccabees were the Taliban, and that the enlightened elite, good guys were really the Hellenists, and that we were a bunch of reactionary so-and-sos.
Are you suggesting that I said any of that?
No.
Okay.
But I'm
You're
saying
just expressing yourself.
that is a theme in the very small circles I get to talk to this to, which is very few people.
Yeah.
So I do think,
We need to be careful
we need
about
to be
these
careful
labels.
about that, because
Yes.
I see the elites as corrupt, as brutal,
Okay.
and as willing to use extreme measures, which I think prompted the revolt.
Okay.
Yes, there's also an element of traditionalist reactionaryism. I'm not saying it's not there, but I don't think that our guys were the Taliban.
Okay.
I don't think they were that bad. I don't think that they were ready to murder fellow Jews wholesale. Only the ones who were, they might be willing to murder the ones who are cooperating, who are they would think as traitors. But so I'm worried about that parallel, because then that says, well, what should have happened is the Hellenists should have won.
Okay. All right. I'm going to stop you. I'm going to stop you there. Yeah.
Well, you have ways of stopping.
Yeah. Because let's not get stuck in a vortex. The point is clear. It's well made. Just because something sounds like it doesn't mean that it is.
Well, somewhat.
And also the oversimplification of it's the elites versus the Orthodox or whatever is just an oversimplified way of talking about something. But one has to acknowledge that then you're not really talking about it with seriousness, because there's no broad stroke label that makes the point accurately. That said, there's a dynamic here, and that's my point. There is a dynamic when groups feel alienated and different from one another. Animosity is much more available as a choice, as a feeling, and over time, it informs the culture that you create. The other becomes othered, and then the othered become truly other. And it could be of our own. Now, today, we look back and we celebrate Hanukkah in such a way that all we do is imagine this oversimplified argument between Judaism and assimilation. So already we have enough history and facts to realize, God, my God, it's so much more complicated. And I can relate to the complicated nature of it much more personally. Because right now we feel there are similarities when there are people who get castigated as others, those who are in control, those who are claimed to be in control, even though they're not. And I don't just mean like the Jews control Washington, like that asinine claim. Believe me, if Jews controlled Washington, things would be very different. Anyway, there's no justifications for it. But the dynamics are fascinating to me. And it's to that I want to call attention to what the meaning is of Hanukkah that we celebrate today.
To me, it seems, I mean, as you're talking, when I'm thinking about, like a guerrilla force or something, I mean, I'm thinking of like the settlers.
So, okay, wonderful. Thank you that's a great segue. I have another page to hand out, but I'll hand it out at the end. The dynamics of the settlers in the territories right now, if you know anything about it, you know that over time it's gotten more and more corrupt and intense and problematic. And today there are people, there are some among the settler community, and when we talk about the extremes, we're talking about people who are intoxicated with the messianic notion that all of the land of Israel belongs to the Jews, and that we need to bring Mashiach by conquering the land, taking it. We can't wait for Mashiach. And
What is that?
the Messiah.
Okay.
Because the religious argument pre-Zionism of the 19th century is, and for 2,000 years, we pray for a return to Zion. We pray for a return to the rebuilding of Jerusalem. We pray for the Jews to be repatriated from the four corners of the earth. And this is seen as captured as part of an overall prophetic vision of an anointed one who will bring us all back together, which is a way of saying, like in the old world, meaning 3,000 years ago, when there were kings, they were anointed with oil. That's how you knew that they were the ones who had all of the responsibility and authority. But then it becomes spiritualized that this king would come back or emerge and have more of a mystical implication than just military and just governmental. It's not just governance, it's also spiritual. So that's the package of Mashiach. And so with that comes, all of our dreams will come true when the Mashiach comes, is basically it. The Jews will return to Israel, will be united, we will have sovereignty, safety, redemption, and then I don't know what comes next, but that's the hope. And I think what is principle in Judaism, I say it a lot, I don't hear it a lot, is that in the same way that the Torah ends with the Israelites on the other side of the Jordan, before they move in and conquer the land, is the point. That's our spirituality. We're on the road. We never get there completely, but we're always going there. And that's why Jerusalem is now built up more than it's ever been in 3,000 years. On Tisha B'Av, you sit your tuchus down and you lament the destruction of Jerusalem, trying not to get hit by the electric trains and the, the drone deliveries or whatever else is happening.
Robots going down the side.
Right, delivering pizza, right. We're always going. And the second that we rest on our laurels, as it were, spiritually, ethically, and so forth, is when we slip back to Egypt. That's a little piece of Chassidus that I like. So I don't want to start talking about Pesach, but this idea, the spiritual idea, and when I say Judaism, I cannot divorce myself from the rabbis, meaning the Mishnah, Talmud, and commentaries that stretch into today, that have created Hanukkah and Purim, also Tu B'Shvat, which we'll talk about coming up in a couple of weeks.
It's the first time I've heard it pronounced. I'm always asking you, how do you pronounce that? And these are reading books to Shai, so thank you.
Yeah.
You asked me to repeat it?
Tu B'Shvat. So Judaism is rabbinic, and the rabbis created Hanukkah as a way of making meaning out of this historical event that happened 150 years before or so. Is that about right? No, 370 years earlier. If we're going to look at the Mishnah, which is edited in the year 200, and this is all taking place in 167. Then we're looking at maybe fewer than 367 years, but quite a long time, centuries before this historical thing happened. Exactly. So cut us a little bit of slack.
But I have the impression that the rabbis had a problem with Hanukkah, or at least with the
Yeah.
Maccabees.
Okay, so that's what I want to get to. In talking about the settlers, there's this zeal, narrowly defined objectives, zeal. And I think underneath every zealot is an absolute pathological narcissist. And so and pathological narcissists make for the best criminals. Or if you end up a criminal with this disposition, you often look for domains where your energies will be welcomed. And what's happening now is that many of the settlers that are creating the more intense problems, especially for the Israeli army, it turns out that there are also criminal elements from around the country. So it's important to know these things, to discolor the black and white perception of when we think about Israel. Oh, there's those settlers, and all they want to do is destroy the Palestinians. And it's like, I'm not saying that there isn't a problem there, but it isn't just that. There's other things going on.
It's interesting. I do
Let
want
me-
to say though,
I'd rather.
occasionally you gotta let me talk.
I just know that you're going to draw me in because I'm passionate about that. Go ahead.
Be faster if you just let me.
You're right. You're
So
right.
I'm just saying that I don't like the settlers. I agree with everything you said, but I have to tell you that I don't think that the rural people at the time of the Maccabees were the settlers, because
Okay, I'm not
it
making
was their
that.
land already. It's not that they were.
Yes, I
displacing
was
other
not
people's
making.
land.
Thank you for that.
No,
I was not
not
making
you.
that.
I'm talking about So they were
Raz?
on their land. They weren't displacing other people's land.
Yeah.
So I don't see them as
I
parallel to the settlers.
thank you.
That's all I wanted to
There was
say.
no mention of that, no intention of
No,
that.
that's all I wanted to say.
The
Thank you
issue
for
of zeal and what we do with zeal. Zeal is a problem. And I wish the Torah was clearer about that. We have the one parsha about Pinchas, who was a zealot, and he doesn't exactly get rebuked. And so that's confounding. But that's way back in the Torah. What the rabbis do out of instinct is they try to tamp down human agency in history and celebrate God's agency in history, God's presence in history. And that's why when we come to both Purim and Hanukkah, neither of which are, I should say, the story of Purim is the book of Esther, which is in the Jewish canon. It's a made-up story. We have no historical corroborating evidence of that story, period. And yet it's in the canon. There are at least 2 books of Maccabees, and I understand there's Maccabees 3 and 4, which may or may not be relevant to the war, which were intentionally kept out of the Jewish canon. They're absorbed into the Catholic and East Orthodox, Orthodox churches. They keep books of Maccabees 1 and 2. We have historical evidence for it, but it's not in our canon. For both Purim and Hanukkah, there's a paragraph of addition, Al Hanisim, for all the miracles that we add into our prayer, and Birkat HaMazon, which essentially says, for all of the miracles that you wrought for our ancestors in those days at this time, you smashed our enemies, you saved us, you did all of these things to preserve us. You, God, in the time of Matityahu HaMaccabi, but it doesn't illustrate anything. There's no prayer and gratitude to the Maccabees. It's all about the Nisim, the miracles that God wrought. And so, and by the way, that is also why, as I understand, scholars determine that Moses is left out of the Haggadah. There's no Moses in the Haggadah, the alleged book that tells the story of the Exodus from Egypt. How do you have the Exodus of Egypt without Moses? Because it was a polemic against the various other communities that would see Moses as some kind of divine figure. Moses, to the Hellenists, was like Mercury. Actually, I don't know if that's Roman mythology, Greek mythology, I don't remember. Mercury, I think, was Roman. And so what is it in Greek? Would that be the messenger? Anyway, the lawgiver, the messenger. The Sumerians worshipped Moses, and so forth. I have a whole sheet on this. So it's fascinating. The rabbis want people to put their energies into God and not humanity. Not because humanity should be irrelevant, but because humanity is corruptible. When you have power, it may, in fact, lead to corruption. And that is exactly what we found with the Hasmoneans. The Maccabees once they eliminate the Greek sovereignty in total, because Antiochus was it the fifth? I think it was the fifth who earned he became the king as an infant. So you can imagine there was a fair amount of political chaos, and that's how they won their. That's one element. Also, they invited the Romans in like it's in here 60 BCE, 63 BCE. The Romans come in to bring order under the invitation of the Hasmonean, priestly. Right. Giving rise to the expression, never invite a Roman over for dinner. Yeah, they'll never leave. What started off as the story of a group of rebels redeeming the temple from idolatry and restoring it to the dedication of the worship of one God within a generation becomes more elitist, political, and corrupt than what they overthrew. And that becomes, for about 100 years, maybe a little bit more depending on how you see it, is what is in power over Jerusalem. So the rabbis know all too well what can happen. And it kind of makes sense. Like if you're on the road and going and it's not done yet and you keep trying to build this ideal, then you keep paying attention to what's ahead. When you stop, when you've made it, when you've done it, humans have energy for survival and pursuit and building, and that energy doesn't go away. It keeps trying to manifest somehow. And so you've got political factions. Why should you have the power? Why not me? Korach against Moses. And then as things split and there's those, the haves and the have-nots, eventually you have the Pinchas with his zealotry, jumps in and tries to restore order or something. And then you hear the story repeating itself. It's a dynamic. There's a human dynamic. Are we forced into it? No. Is that how we're programmed? Well, to some extent, there's a firmware issue that we have. You know, when God says, when you come into the land, is my favorite parsha. You know this from my announcing it almost every other week in Torah class. My favorite parsha, my favorite chapter is chapter 8 in Deuteronomy. When you come into the land, you grow fat off the produce and everything's hunky and dory and all of that. Don't think for a second that it is you and your power that got you all of this abundance. For man does not live by bread alone, except for all that comes forth from God's mouth. In other words, there's this relational thing to keep that energy flowing. We cannot ground the energy back into ourselves. It needs to be grounded in the source of all. We need to not take credit. We need to always be working to achieve more, I think. And so here come the rabbis with this instinct to try to tamp down human agency to some extent, to a large extent, and rather direct it to God. When they ask, what is Hanukkah? Their job is not to give us a historical analysis. Their job is to teach us a very important spiritually human lesson. Take all of your energy and put it in the service of God. Put it to the service of light. And that's why all they talk about is the light, the candles, where do you put it, and all of that.
And they were trying to create a post-temple way of celebrating Hanukkah.
Yes,
Celebrate the rededication of the temple, and they had all of this
exactly. And
unfortunate history to look back on.
right, and it's so much of what informs the rabbinic effort in the creation of the Mishnah and the Gemara is how do we capture the temple experience as we translate it for the community.
I'm glad they ignored the military aspect of it almost entirely. And I love the Haftorah for Hanukkah, because it's not by might, not by power.
But by spirit alone.
And I must say, I'm hoping that that was done deliberately.
I would say, yeah,
That that's a deliberate rejection of the military part.
yeah. All right, I brought here since here, let me stop. Like, that was a whole TED Talk. To bring us through the intellectually and maybe to spark a little imagination. Any thoughts and reflections? Yes.
Number one, on solitude. I learned a lesson back in 2001 when Mother Teresa died. Articles about her, and it talked about, here, she actually had doubts. And I read a book about her years earlier, her work with the dead and the dying people in Calcutta and her charities and stuff. And I was really surprised that the Vatican or priests were saying that she was privileged to have some doubts about her work. A few days later, September 11th happens, World Trade Center attack. Those folks obviously have no doubt whatsoever as they're ramming the jet planes into the towers. So I finally understood the value of doubt, even if what you're doing has got to be worthy and valuable and helpful.
Yes. That's wonderful, Frederica. There's a book that you would absolutely love by Peter Berger called In Praise of Doubt, How to Have Convictions Without Becoming a Fanatic. Have you read it?
No, I should.
Okay, yes. Yeah, I mention it periodically on Yom Kippur.
I keep forgetting to have a technical.
Well, actually, I've, at various times, I work for an interfaith organization, and I end up trying to explain Hanukkah to,
Right. Okay.
And Catholic nuns.
she was actually better informed than some of the other people.
Yeah. If you want to be a little subversive, you could say, it's not the Jewish Christmas. It was about the Jews eliminating the tree worshipers from the temple. And just let it sit there and see if they get it.
I don't think I ever put it exactly that way.
No, you probably didn't. And I probably wouldn't say that either, except, I have a Yetzer Hara also. I have the thought. It's radically different. And one of the challenges is that, especially in America, there's a tendency to just imagine that everything's pretty much the same with a different accent. All religions are the same, guys. All organized religions are the same. They all say love your neighbor. How do we begin?
Not those people who think that Spanish is English, where you just put an O on every word.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly the same. Except
That's a big problemo. So no, we're not all the same. That we have anything in common is not an accident, because there is such a thing as good that a lot of people can assess. It's good. Love is good. But it's always more complicated than the simple goods. So no, Hanukkah is not the Jewish Christmas. It is a festival of light in the darkest time of the year. Yeah, that Christmas and Diwali, I think, and Kwanzaa and whatever. Fine. That's not what we're thinking about. We have, if the anthropological origin of kindling light in the darkest time of the year, we can find that has happened for hundreds of thousands of years, that Homo sapiens have been roaming the earth. Okay, then we can say that's what it is.
As long as they had fire. Most likely.
Right, for as long as we've had fire, we've had Hanukkah. So that's probably not really it either. It's cute, it's nice. Okay, we can all relate to that. Hanukkah is historically one story, but endures because of a different one. And the rabbinic take on Hanukkah, focusing on the miraculous, is a way of trying to say we need to be careful of our own power, conscientious of it, and remember what our job is. Because when a person gets drunk with power, or at least focused on power, you forget what your job is. Because sometimes your job will say, take all that energy that you have to try and do that and ignore it. Because that's not your job anymore. Your job is just to run your business at the corner, ethically, kindly, be nice to people. Help people who need help. That's your job. But wait, look at me. I command legions. I need to do something with it. No, you don't. Actually, you'd make everything worse. You'd make yourself feel better. There could be a lot of gratification of lusts by going to war. But maybe here that's not your job. Now, there is a time for war, but it's not always. It's not when you feel like it or just because you have this idea about yourself and what things should be. You are the problem. That's what Hanukkah says. You are the problem. Kindle a light of God. God is the source of light. We are the conduit. We are to be the candle in the world of darkness. That's our job. And it's kind of hard, and that's all really nice, Rabbi. Wow, that's so spiritual. But I have a business to run. I have, like, you don't understand where this government's going. Like, we got to take care of ourselves. This government, and I could be talking about Israel, I could be talking about here, it's all things are off. All bets are off now. It's all in our hands. Like, that's a very egotistical thought. Suddenly, I'm the one that knows what God wants. If we don't bring doubt to things like that, we're all in a lot of trouble. Why is Moses considered the greatest of all of the Jewish prophets? And why, maybe, therefore, was he the one who was as close to face with God of any human according to our tradition? Because he didn't want the job. He tried to get out of it 5 different ways. Why me? Who am I? I'm slow of speech, slow of tongue. Oh, come on. They don't know me. They don't know you. They're not going to listen. Until God's nostrils flare and says, okay, I get it. I'll take it. He didn't want the job. What's that?
Okay,
if you insist. As he's being dangled over the abyss. So he doesn't want the job. He's considered the most humble of them all, which is a true spiritual giant, a person who can conquer themselves, as the rabbis teach. Hakovesh et yitzro.
He's a hero.
Yes, who is the hero, who's the champion, who's the strong one, the one who conquers themselves. Now, conquer doesn't mean eliminate, but it means
Control.
absolute management and control, which is why I think Buddhism is so interesting, because this dynamic, this process, this practice of detachment from things like material, which is an ego inflammation. Moderating the ego inflammation is necessary for freedom. Yeah.
Actually, in some ways, you could compare. I've been watching, the Revolutionary War stuff.
Yeah,
Oh, I
Compare
can't wait to see it.
Washington to
right,
George Washington in some ways.
right. He gave up power,
Yeah, exactly.
yes,
I mean,
voluntarily.
Moses didn't was prevented from going into the land, but Washington went home by himself.
Well, he did give over authority to Joshua.
Yes,
That is true.
But he did want to go into the land. And I don't blame him.
No, but you're right. Having humility is important if you have that much power. Very
Yes.
important, critically important.
Absolutely. And I think, in a way, the rabbis are trying to tell that story. Because when you see the Maccabees go from righteous indignation to righteous assault to conquest and almost immediately to corruption, we kind of fall from the heights of allegory and spiritual inspiration and pride into, I guess they're just people. I guess we're just people.
I didn't understand. I didn't learn about that until much later in my life, though. When I was a kid, what I heard about was the miracle.
Right.
And in a rationalist age, the rabbis were spiritualizing the whole historical thing. But when you learn about that in a rationalist age, it's kind of hard if you don't, if you have trouble believing that the light burned for 8 days. Actually, I liked Frederica's conservation take on that.
Yeah.
Which I'd never heard before.
Uh-huh. So wonderful. The question is, are we doing a disservice not teaching this other very pragmatic human element? Are we doing a disservice to the children by saying, forget about the oil and the miracle, control yourselves? I'm obviously overstating it, but
You need a lot of time to do this is the problem. One of our problems is we don't get a lot of time to teach people things. Their Jewish education is shrunk down to
right.
little.
So may I take that as a segue? Because
Sure,
I think what you just said leads us to the Hanukkah.
Okay.
Because as you know, this is how we celebrate the ritual. We all are familiar with the story of the oil lasting only for 8 days. I'm sorry, it should have only lasted for 1, but it lasted for 8. And the Talmud goes into, so how do we do this? And the mitzvah is ner ishu beito, 1 candle for every household. And then, but if you want to do mehadrin, then it's 1 candle per person in the house. So 4 people in the household, 4 candles, but that's all you light. But if a mehadrin, mina mehadrin, to do it the best of the best, then you have a split. You have 8 lights, but how do you do it? Shammai says you start with 8, and every night you take 1 down. And there's a couple of different explanations for that, having to do with Sukkot, which raises the concept that Hanukkah is really Sukkot because they had just missed Sukkot. So they're just now they're going to do Sukkot because now they can. Okay, so that's one theory. But another, which I like, which is not in the Talmud, but it should be, is that every night the energetic power of this miracle was diminishing by 1/8 every day. Actually, is that right? 1/8 or
1/7 if it's supposed to last 1.
Yeah, I need to turn to my
1/8.
yeah.
You always need a statistician.
Yes.
How do you know it's not exponential? Never mind.
Yeah.
Let's take the log.
Exponential decay, I think a log of 1/8.
What's the Fisher score? That's all I remember from statistics is the Fisher score.
Wow, I give you credit for that.
All right, yes.
But the idea of diminishing the light every day doesn't, I admit I'm used to the other way, but it doesn't appeal to me at all.
That's not what that's
Right,
what
but
follows your
now
mind.
but stop thinking with your heart and think with your left brain. Like, doesn't it make logical sense to mirror
Each day there was a little less.
there was a little less, right? So I was like, oh my God, are we going to make it? Are we going to, I mean, you could dress it up the way you like. It's logical. Feh, I'm with you. Hillel is, you add one, and his reasoning is ma'alin bekodesh v'lo moridin. We go up in holiness, we don't diminish holiness. So it's with that idea of holiness increasing that we ought to be teaching our children. Because then the question is, well, what does it mean to be holy? And ultimately you get to the issue of self-control, self-management. Because if holiness is created by making distinction between that which is elevated and that which is mundane, it is going to require self-control and how we regulate ourselves. I want to do what I want to do when I want to do it. Okay, I got that, Mr. 2-year-old. How, the people who are most praised at the end of life, is it the person that had the most money?
No.
The largest collection of Ferraris? Who, having a collection of Ferraris is not so bad, but I would think.
Yeah.
Or is it the person who made space for others, who always showed up, the person who gave of themselves? If you were touched by somebody who did something for you, who showed up for you, you will never forget that. And it's like, that's what you want to see in people. And it's a thing that needs to be cultivated and developed. This idea that babies are born good is just not true. They're just born innocent. They have to be trained to become good.
Or bad.
Or bad. Except bad can also come from the very natural place of self-serving instinct and drives.
Good is harder,
Good is harder because it requires some regulation, self-regulation. We all have our bad moments. We all have difficult periods of time. Some of us have had rough environmental circumstances that make it even harder to appreciate goodness and service and help and being there for someone. I mean, there's lots of great reasonable reasons why a person might not be their best self. And nevertheless, Judaism in particular, I would say Judaism because that's what I know the best, pushes, reinforces this notion of ma'alin b'kodesh, trying to go up in holiness. And to me, that's ultimately what Hanukkah is about, because we need to learn from the destruction and failure of the past to redirect our hopes for the future. That's ultimately what Hanukkah is about. And then the metaphor of illuminating darkness starts to take on a different kind of shape. It's not just looking backwards. The eternal light that is over the ark is meant to give us a sense of direction in a darkened room. And what does it direct us to? Not God, the Torah. So here with that, I think there was a question about, what was your practical question?
You had a question.
Well, I had a question
Level.
about.
Oh, the level, right. Okay, so the rabbis use the language of pirsuma nisa. The purpose of the ritual is to advertise the miracle or publicize it. And so therefore it needs to be put either in the front window or outside your front door facing the public. That's why in Israel, most houses are built with a little Hanukkah box, like out in front. It's kind of cool. Therefore, if it needs to be publicized, the public needs to see it. And if they need to see it, They need to see it clearly. So what if you had a funkadelic Hanukkah, dinosaur or otherwise, and it's like this?
You can turn the dinosaur to be across the
Okay, but let's say it's designed in such a way that some of them are behind others.
Anyway,
Okay, no. So I'm talking about design. I'm not talking about that one. I'm talking about funky design. If it's not clear how many lights you have, then you're not fulfilling the mitzvah of having other people see what night of the miracle it is. And so when it's different levels, candles also burn at different rates sometimes, if it's candles. If it's different heights, you could miss it. That's the argument. It's not because of some fundamentalist whatever, but it's the fundamentalist instinct that'll say it's not kosher.
so you're saying underneath it, there was actually a practical rationale.
That's yeah.
And I appreciate practical rationales for things.
Yes.
What does our Mara d'Atra say about it, if we were to have one?
So this Mara d'Atra would say how you do it in your own home is, needs to be contemplated by you. As an institution, since we're trying to fulfill the mitzvah for other people as well,
Yes.
we're going to do it a certain way.
Well,
Same with the kitchen.
I have an electric one in the window,
Yeah.
But where they're all at the
where they're all the
We
same.
don't actually own one of these dinosaurs.
Oh,
But it
okay.
attracted you when you
I
saw
thought
it.
it was so cute.
I think there's no problem with the dinosaur one so long as they're all on the same level on a long tail, for instance. And in fact, the candle holder could be like the little teeth or whatever.
I recently found an electric menorah I'd forgotten I had in the garage. Are there any problems with electric menorahs?
Yeah, so because this is a holiday that is focused on the oil, we, a lot of people will say we should use oil. Which kind of oil? Olive oil is the best, but you want a high quality so that it doesn't smoke. Fair enough, you can do that. I don't.
But candles have been customary in our culture. For
Yeah, so if you're going to
number of
use a candle,
centuries.
which is fine, it's absolutely fine to use wax. You just want it to last for at least a half hour. And so these don't really cut it. They burn out 15 minutes, more or less. But that's the halachic thing. You want it to last long enough. And you do it, when can you start to light candles? Ad shetichle regel min hashuk. Once the people leave the marketplace. So at the end of the market day, right, but today it's never, but so you have to work with the time scale of the time. And so at sundown, after sundown, people clean up and they leave. So when you get home after work, which means anytime, but try to do it sooner rather than later. It's not like Shabbat candles that have to be done by a certain time.
Yeah, that was something that I had to deal with when I was a copy editor who worked till 11 o'clock at night,
And
I did sometimes like them.
yeah,
I felt a little funny about it, but I would like.
I know,
to
but it's good that you did
midnight
it.
or whatever.
I feel you. Exactly. Me too. It's good that you do it, even if it's the middle of the night, it's 2 a.m, and you're just going to sit there and look at them for a little bit. Great. And since oil is the theme, that's why the foods that we eat are oil-based, latkes and sufganiyot and so forth. All right, I wanted to just end with this. I hope I have enough.
Quick comment about oil, if someone's going to be using oil. It
Might have
not
to
use dental
share, to
floss
share, yeah.
as the root. And I knew someone who tried it and it does not work.
Dental floss is away.
They
You
got
might have
the
to share.
impression that olive oil doesn't burn well. No, it's dental floss is no good. Use cotton.
Dental floss?
Okay.
Yeah, that's what they were using.
All right, so I would like for our learning on Hanukkah to kind of retain the historical lesson conveyed abstractly by the rabbis to inform a more spiritual sense. We need to learn from the mistakes of history in order to emphasize what we ought to be doing and what we ought to be learning from this. And by the way, I hope you'll take some time to read. Oh, and I do want to hand out, I also have another handout because I couldn't help but see a direct line between the destruction, between the Hanukkah story and Tisha B'Av, the destruction of the temple. Given the kinds of corruption of the Hasmoneans, given the kind of civil war and civil strife, it suddenly made the destruction of the temple make more sense, because we know that there were factions that were burning each other's food stores in Jerusalem, and that's what led to this catastrophic destruction of the Jewish people there. But the rabbis don't talk about any of that. What they do talk about is the story of Kamsa bar Kamsa, where the rabbis sat there and did nothing while somebody was humiliated in public. And that led this person to go to the Roman government and say, hey, those upstarts in Judea, you might want to send them a sacrifice because they're going to reject it. And then he puts a blemish on it, which was kosher by the Romans, but not kosher by the Jews. So now the Jews were stuck. They had to reject this. And that's the rabbinic story of how the Romans came in to destroy the temple, but it was about the humiliation. It was about the sinat chinam, the gratuitous hatred between Jews, captured in that story, but is really reflecting on what probably was an evident kind of civil strife. In Israel before October 7th, there was near civil war.
Yes, that's right, there were all those
protests.
Demonstrations, protests. It was roundly, referred to as the judicial reform protests. And people felt intensely strongly about it. But there was also, it was the religious right-wing fanatical government, or I should say a more extremist right-wing government than Israel had ever had, that were also trying to ramrod all kinds of bills through that would have undercut and undermined so much of what present Israeli society wants.
So it wasn't just the judicial.
It wasn't just that. It became an umbrella for a bunch of things, but what people mostly focused on was the courts. But just to take that as a kind of example where it was near civil war. Civil war was happening, or I should say civil strife.
Strife.
I wouldn't call it war, but it's strife, fair enough.
They weren't killing each other.
Then comes October 7th, and all of that energy went into unification, and which was, I think, nobody was expecting that. The point that I wanted to make is that there's always a question of what kind of Judaism ought we have. And your innocent question, Jeff, I think is related to this. Like, what should, is it okay to use a dinosaur Hanukkah? Some people would say yes, some people would say no. Right, so now magnify that. In today's world, how do you judge whether or not a person is religious or not? They keep Shabbat and they keep Kashrut. And in the Orthodox world, laws of family purity. If you don't do those, then you're not really religious. Why? Those aren't moral and ethical issues. Well, the way animals are treated is, but not the Kashrut as itself, right? It's measurable. It's not ethical. Well, how about checking people's bank accounts and see how close to that 10% they're getting? You're religious, huh? Let's see the statement.
How much are you donating to charity?
Yeah.
Right, but just because you're donating a lot doesn't mean that you're giving your fair share.
Yes, I understand.
So I want to check your tzitzis. If I'm going to check your tzitzis, Frederica, on how kosher your kitchen is, why shouldn't I be checking your tzitzis on your tzedakah? Like that actually makes more of an impact on the world than,
yes.
how red the sticker is on Fleshek, Jewish civil strife is not new. What we do with it, how we manage it, how we navigate it, I think the Hanukkah story also tries to, find its way through that as well. This brings us together, and it should. The Sfat Emet, it just has this lovely, lovely, what I consider Hanukkah Torah. And with this, we'll end. Would somebody care to read?
Sure.
Please.
In the Midrash, a candle of God is the soul of man. The Blessed Holy One said, "Let my candle be in your hand and yours in mine." And what is the candle of God? That is Torah, as Scripture says, "For a commandment is a candle and Torah is light."
Okay, so hold on. A candle of God is the soul of man. That comes from Mishle, from Proverbs. So that's that's a verse that he is going to explain as a source of explaining a verse from Parshat Tetzaveh, which is later in this. A commandment is a candle, and Torah is light. Did you read that part after Proverbs?
That's where I got to.
Okay, keep going. Keep going.
What is, quote, a commandment is a candle, unquote. Whoever does a mitzvah is like one who lights a candle before the Blessed Holy One and gives light to his soul, which is called a candle. Quote, a candle of God is the soul of man, unquote.
Okay.
The meaning of a candle of God is that God's providence in the lower world is through the souls of Israel. By means of their service, Israel draws divine providence and the light of God's countenance into the world. Do you want me to continue?
Let's discuss that. I wanted to show this, the recording. Where do you think this is going? How does this connect?
It reminds me of a line in our earlier version of the prayer book, Nasim Shalom, where, I can't remember right now, it's the second to the last prayer we do, which had a line, "May all who claim to love you be a blessing." So in my view, the light of God's countenance in the world is the way you do things that make the world a better place.
Oh, lovely.
So people can get in arguments about what counts as making the world a better place.
Okay, very good. I like that. What is the Sfat Emet saying specifically?
What it's saying is for each of us to try and be a light into the world. And
How?
make it better by following the mitzvah.
Exactly. That's it. Doing the mitzvah is the conduit to, now I'm not going to use your language because it's debatable. How do we know when we're making the world a better place?
Right. People
You know.
argue over that a lot.
Exactly. But doing the mitzvah is a conduit of light from God. That's the synapse. We unleash God's light in the world when we do a mitzvah.
And that would include the moral mitzvot as well as the
Ritual.
more ritual.
Yeah, if it's a mitzvah, meaning commanded by the Torah, there's no distinguishing
Right.
one or the other. We can, we do our own little taxonomy. But according to this, observing a mitzvah is bringing God's light into the world. But then, there are two sorts of darkness. Now it gets good. Who wants to read that? Let's
Say it's a chance.
let's share the wealth here.
There are two sorts of darkness. One comes about through the evil inclination and the, quote, other side.
The Sitra Achra. Go ahead.
That is true darkness, but it can be negated by means of the mitzvot.
Okay. Evil inclination is a source of darkness. How do you eliminate it? Performance of a mitzvah. What does it take to perform a mitzvah when your Yetzer Hara is saying namaste in bed?
Self-control, self-discipline.
Yes. So
I like this next part. I'm always reading ahead.
I know, it's great. Go ahead.
That is why doing a mitzvah is like lighting a candle before God. It is preparing a place where his glorious presence can dwell. By means of this, you enlighten your soul, the candle. For the supreme light is also considered darkness to us, since it is beyond our reach. The holy books thus refer to it as darkness. The more light a person brings about in the physical darkness through doing the mitzvot, the more that one will enlighten his soul from the, quote, dark light above.
Okay, I think that's really interesting. Dark light above. Dark light, like dark matter. I don't know, makes me think interesting things.
Yeah.
So let's should we do this last paragraph? We can. Okay. I feel like we've kind of stretched out the time a little much, and I'd like to.
We started late.
Yeah. Well, just okay. Fine. Let's read the last paragraph. I have a hard time not reading just the last part. Jessica, would you like to read the last one? Now you shall.
Now you shall command, bring the mitzvah into the souls of Israel so that they themselves become mitzvot. All our limbs are really there for the sake of doing mitzvot. The Talmud offers two meanings for quote, you shall do them, end quote. One is that whoever fulfills a mitzvah is considered by God as one who had invented it. The other is as though he had made himself. The two interpretations are really one. It is the remaking, tikkun, of the person that takes place through mitzvot, forming him into one dedicated to God. That's his name. That person is then sent into this world only to do the will of his creator. He himself has become a mitzvah. This is the meaning of Asher Kitshanu b'mitzvotah, who has made us holy through his mitzvot, Vetzivanu, and made us into mitzvot.
Vetzivanu. Isn't that an interesting play on the word mitzvah? Tzivui is commandment, or a mitzvah is commandment. Vetzivanu has made me into a mitzvah. So there's this, huh?
I thought new was us.
It is, but you know, he's creative. Because anu,
Okay,
you know, ani.
I get it.
I love this kind of chassidus, which takes our action, simple action, and it categorically shifts it from doing a nice thing for someone to the fulfillment of a mitzvah. If you have a consciousness of the Torah commandments and I'm going to do it, and so I do it, and then I did it, and then there's the reverberation in the world because of that context, as opposed to there's a person who's just naturally nice and they do nice things and they impact the world and it's lovely, but it's that's not in a system where you can teach and promote and expand the reach of the power of the mitzvah, of the effectiveness, the efficacy of mitzvot in the world. And so, in a way, where I see this relating directly to Hanukkah, and you know, we can all, this is all dancing with the light, right? How Hanukkah can also be a kind of holiday that reminds us of the mitzvot, and especially when Hanukkah is not in the Torah, it's an extension of Judaism to say that lighting candles, davka, is a way of reminding ourselves to do the kind of tikkun on ourselves that comes through incorporation of ourselves into Judaism, Jewish life, into Torah, into mitzvah. And it's there that we then have the possibility of helping ourselves by helping other people, because you don't get any credit for what you think. You only get credit for what you do. So doing, because it's a mitzvah, will have this regenerative, effect on your spiritual batteries. I'm thinking all kinds of electric car metaphors. I'm gonna there was a bumper sticker that I saw. We used to see it a lot. Do random acts of kindness. Yeah. And I thought, oh, that's so nice. And then I thought, that's not so nice. What do you mean random acts of, how about do consistent, significant, systematic acts of kindness? That's what it should be. Oh, I'm feeling really good. I'm going to go give a guy $1. I'm so good. That's nice. That's not tikkun. It's better than nothing.
Well, that
you get that.
We've always taught is that you do it whether you feel like it or not.
That's right. And in the Talmud, there's a whole debate. Who is better, the one who is commanded and does, or the person who is not commanded and still does? And after lengthy back and forth, they conclude, better to be commanded and do.
Do it even when you don't feel like it.
Even if you don't feel like it, or I have no choice and I'm doing it.
Rather than simply out of the goodness of your heart.
Right. And it's not a home run. It's not always clear where the place of, we don't want to become automatons. On the other hand, thinking that you should only operate when you feel it is also a mistake. The lights of Hanukkah are meant to bring us all of us back into the history, the complexity, the civil strife, the rejection of external forces, the implementation of our own identity, and to also remind us of the consequences of power, the corruption, the decay, that politics also has a say. But despite it all, ma'alin b'kodesh v'lo moridin. We go up in holiness and don't go down, because eternally, as the menorah in the temple was meant to be lit every single day, tamid, regularly, every day, Hanukkah becomes a representation of the necessity of our always putting our mitzvah light potential forward, first and foremost, that is our job. Okay, guys, thank you very much. I'm going to stop this.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Sure. Thank you for
Nice way
joining.
to spend a Sunday morning.
All right.